I'll count you in, actually.
And this is a promo generally for you. It's not
for
me.
Toronto mic'd.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you want. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, recording in 5, 4, 3.
Ooh, yeah, Toronto Mike, down in the basement in Toronto, but I'm not going to tell you exactly where he lives because I don't want you coming to his front porch, knocking on the door, scaring his kids, scaring his family. Yeah, he's got a nice family. Yeah, they're very pleasant. Toronto Mike is brought to you by Palma Pasta. Yeah, it's delicious, but I'll tell you this right now. If you eat too many carbs, it might put you in the ground, at which point Ridley Funeral Homes will be there for you. Yeah, in between the overconsumption of carbs and your death, go to a Toronto Maple Leafs baseball game. Yeah, and when you do that, go to Christie Pits. Yeah, it's a bit of a strange name, but it is actually a pit. It is down in the ground, and the cops won't see you drinking a Great Lakes beer. Yeah, because sometimes in some places it's still illegal to drink publicly, although I hear, that city council is doing a 17th pilot project to see if it'll fly at Trinity Bellwoods Park. Yeah, we just need Toronto Mike Mayor. Yeah, why not? Yeah, John Tory, Olivia Chow, Toronto Mike, make it 3-on-1. Yeah, put them together. City council. It's pretty good. It's nice being here in the basement. The one thing I will tell you, though, this is not a home that was built yesterday or within the last 5 years or within the last 50 years for that matter. I am 6'1". The ceiling down here is not. It might be 5'5". Yeah, but that's okay because as long as the fire alarm doesn't go off or the boundless and endless construction that is occurring on the street does not create a loud thud or bang that scares the crap out of us, I won't jump up out of my chair and concuss myself. But it is wonderful to be here. Yeah, Toronto Mike runs the show. The Macho Man Randy Savage is honored, even though word is, at this particular juncture on July the 10th, 2025, I have been deceased for more than 14 years. Yeah. Elizabeth and I are partying up in heaven, yeah.
What up, Mike? That was amazing. I would have given you 60 minutes for that, Scotty, man.
You would have, eh?
Absolutely, in a heartbeat. Welcome to episode 1728 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Toronto's Waterfront BIA. Check out what's happening on Toronto's waterfront this summer. Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. Get your butts to Christie Pits this summer for the best baseball in the city outside the dome. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto's Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management, Inc., and Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, returning to Toronto Mike, this time in person, it's Scott MacArthur. Welcome back, Scott.
Kind of sucks for you now, Mike, because I have to give my voice a rest for the next 5 or 6 hours after the Macho Man. And by the way, apologies to any of your sponsors who Randy Savage did not mention there, but I tried to get them all in.
You know what? I love it when Randy Savage makes an appearance on Toronto Mike, a former aspiring professional baseball player.
Yes, St. Louis Cardinals organization, if I'm not mistaken.
Quite a story. It actually, in a weird way, I just did a deep dive into the history of Dave Stieb and why he belongs in Cooperstown. I was going to ask you about that later in this chat. But I'm thinking, okay, so they draft Dave Stieb as an outfielder. Mm-hmm. They guess they realize pretty quick he can't hit in the majors, and they convert him to a pitcher, and he just learns a slider in relatively quickly, 6 months later. He's like the ace of the Blue Jays. I mean, it wasn't a high bar to be the ace of that Blue Jays staff, but still, like so quickly he converted from outfield prospect to like Cooperstown caliber starting pitcher. I don't know why when I hear that story, I always think of Randy Poffo. Right? He was like he was an outfielder, right?
Yeah.
And then aspiring, and then instead of becoming like a Cooperstown worthy starting pitcher, he became a WWF Hall of Famer.
Yeah, but in between, right, his dad, Angelo Poffo, ran what was considered an outlaw wrestling promotion in I believe, the Memphis area, and they went up against the Jarretts and Jerry Lawler. And I think, I don't want to get this wrong because I think
Stone will let you know.
Yeah, and I think you're flooded with wrestling historians other than Stu Stone who listen in here, but I believe that they were starting to pull audience enough that both factions decided it would be best to work together. And then Savage ended up, of course, in WWF, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. Oh, yeah. I think maybe I was going to say Robert Lawson can fact check that.
Just want to say one more thing, Mike Boone. The way that we're sitting here, right in my eye line, just on the other side of your face was my WrestleMania 2 opponent, George the Animal Steele, who had a little bit of a thing for my dear Elizabeth. Yeah, he would chase her around with that throw rug on his back. We didn't like that very much, did we? Yeah, and he was also in the corner of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat for the epic WrestleMania 3 match. Yeah, if you dig what I'm saying.
You need to rest your voice after that one. So that was a gift, actually, from the aforementioned Stu Stone. But I was going to say, the fact-checking for all that you gave me about Angelo Poffo will come from, I think, John Pollock, who's a listener of the program.
Yes.
And he's, as you know, he's covering a lot of the wrestling action.
Yep.
Okay, shout out to Waiting? Of course, Waiting. I get it. Waiting and John Pollock, FOTMs. But, okay, you're here in the flesh. So how long do we have you in the GTA, Scott MacArthur?
Got here on Tuesday, so I drove all the way from Nova Scotia. Thank you, by the way, to you and Steve Simmons for keeping me company for a couple of hours as I crossed from Nova Scotia into New Brunswick.
What did you think of the Steve Simmons return?
Oh, it was an awesome conversation. I was totally riveted. And can I break a secret here that I think might disappoint a lot of people? Steve Simmons as a person, if I can stay with wrestling terminology, is a babyface. He is a good guy. I know he's polarizing, and he has thrived in that sphere as a longtime columnist, but I will always remember, and he's not the only one, but certainly one of the most significant. When I started kicking around Leafs practices not long after moving to Toronto in 2011 and meeting people, Steve was one of the most welcoming. And it means a lot when somebody from the area, but who had worked only in Ottawa and wasn't really a known commodity by any stretch of the imagination, is welcomed by people of Steve's stature. So Steve Simmons is a babyface, and I will go to my grave telling anybody that.
Well, I've been telling people that for years. This was his fourth visit, and the reason, and we did have there was a pandemic and a lot going on, so we had a gap. But the fourth visit, because I like the man. I think he's a sweetheart, and I get a lot of notes when I have Steve Simmons on, and the notes in a nutshell are, I love you, man, but I ain't listening to this bozo. Like, I'm not listening to this clown. And that's their loss, because I think it was a great 2 hours. But I also get notes from people, shout out to Cooksey, I get notes from people who are like, I so badly want to dislike this guy, but that 2 hours was amazing, and I can't help but like him. I think he is like a polarizing figure, because you can talk about Phil Kessel and the hot dog story and everything, but he is a sweetheart, and he's compelling. That was a great 2 hours.
Well, and I think one of the gifts that you have here, Mike, is that people are willing to be vulnerable with you. And so I've known for a long time, I don't know how much Steve talked about it publicly. I'm sure that he has, but he certainly would talk about it personally, about his insomnia and stuff like that, and just what a challenge it has been for him throughout his life. And so I was aware of that and intrigued to hear him go deeper in on that and about that with you in conversation. But yeah, it was a great 2 hours, and I was listening as I crossed the Nova Scotia-New Brunswick border, which, other than looking at windmills and farmland, is boring without something in my ears.
Well, thank you for listening, Scotty Mac. Praise from Caesar. Your T-shirt says East Coast Lifestyle. Can you adapt for your? I guess you're here visiting parents or what you're doing here, but maybe you're just visiting me. That would be great to believe. But like, can you come back to the GTA lifestyle after you've adapted for so long now to the East Coast lifestyle?
You mean, can I sit in traffic and immediately become enraged? Absolutely.
You want to borrow my bicycle?
Absolutely, I can. Well, I don't know if I even answered your initial question. I got here.
Oh, yeah.
I got here Tuesday, and I am flying to Edinburgh early next week, and I'm doing a week in Scotland and a week in France, and then I will fly back to Pearson, spend a couple of days here to let the jet lag chill,
right?
And I'll head back in my car to Nova Scotia start of August, get back sometime during the August long weekend, and spend a month enjoying the beaches and just summer in Nova Scotia before school starts again the day after Labor Day.
That sounds amazing, this trip to Scotland, and yeah, very cool. So what are you going to do in Scotland? You got an itinerary?
Scotland is going to be very busy. I'm going with an aunt and her daughter, my cousin, with whom I'm very close, both of them. And we're going to do some family tracing. My aunt has done this before with her siblings, which includes my dad and all the spouses and my grandparents, who are sadly now long gone. But they did a family trip in 1987 and traced some things. So we're going to go to where we are from, which is Inverary, and we're going to spin up to Glencoe, because a little more than 200 years ago, after what we understand to be a dispute over sheep, our clan, which was the Campbell clan, may have been a little nasty to the MacDonalds, and by that I mean may have slaughtered a few people, which then resulted in some of us coming over to Canada, or what was pre-Canada,
right,
and settling. And 200 plus years later, here you are stuck with me in your basement.
Well, I don't have a sheep for you to take home with you, but as you witnessed, so there was a lot of activity when you arrived. You had to park somewhere else because there's construction going on. So there's that whole debacle. But I also have some work being done here to like satisfy some like insurance requirements. So it's not like the fun work. It's just like, oh, give us some money so you can keep living here or whatever. And so I had a guy down here looking at something that's messed up down here. But meanwhile, Noah Petrucci had arrived. Now, he couldn't park in front because of the aforementioned construction. So who knows where he had to walk with the lasagnas. So Noah Petrucci is the son of Anthony Petrucci, and the Petrucci family owns and operates Palma Pasta. And you had a nice exchange of Noah, which we'll absolutely get to, Anthony, because you, Scott MacArthur, you're a big Palma Pasta fan.
I am, and so are my parents. So when I left this morning and said goodbye, they know, of course, I'm coming in here today. I said, when I get home, I will have a Palma Pasta lasagna in my hands. And if you could have seen my mother's eyes go saucer big, like, oh,
nice.
So, and my parents will buy Palma Pasta products, particularly the lasagna, every now and then, and we'll eat it, and it always makes me think of you and our visits here. So nice to have a little complimentary one. So
Noah got here just in time because I said I need an emergency delivery Thursday morning because Scotty Mac is here. Jill Deacon got the last lasagna that was in the freezer yesterday, and Noah, like ownership, the family, like came in the truck to deliver the lasagna for you and your parents. What are your parents' names?
Dad's James, we call him Jamie, and Mom's Terry.
Okay, Terry and James. Will Terry and James listen to this episode of Toronto Mike?
They certainly will. Call him Jamie, though. James is too formal.
Okay,
yeah, so Terry and James.
I have a son named James. That's why I went to... Yeah, my oldest is named James. Jamie. Okay, I feel like Jamie to James would be sort of like Mike to Michael or whatever. It's
a little more formal. Yeah.
Okay, I get it. All right, so will Jamie and Terry will listen to this episode?
They will, yes, absolutely. And I'm sure they will do that before they devour the Palma Pasta, because there may be a slightly expanded family dinner suddenly being organized for Friday that will revolve around this lasagna.
Well, that's perfect, because you can stick it in the fridge for 24 hours, and then you could cook this up tomorrow night. That's perfect here. But now, even knowing that your parents are listening to us right now, I feel like I need to be nicer to you. You've taken the edge off. I was going to be a complete jerk to you.
Perfect. Excellent. That was the goal all along, Mike, was to soften you up without you even realizing it. But unfortunately, you have realized it.
I don't want Terry to be mad at me is what I'm saying here. Okay, so I'm going to just go through. We mentioned Steve Simmons just made his 4th appearance to the basement. This is actually your 3rd visit to the basement. We'll explain all the episodes now. And as we go through this, I've been doing this recently. Going through descriptions of previous visits allows us to follow up on some things because it's been a while. But your first visit, Scott MacArthur, was August 2019. Episode 499, and here's the description. Mike chats with Scott MacArthur about his years at TSN 1050, his decision to join Sportsnet 590 The Fan and host Blue Jays Talk, his battles with depression, and his decision to live his life openly as a proud gay man. So that was a heavy 2-hour episode in August 2019.
I can't believe it was almost 6 years ago.
No.
499.
I hadn't even recorded episode 500.
Well, we talked, right, and we talked last month when I joined you over Zoom about
Spoiler alert.
You were trying to do a big thing for 500, and
you still did a big thing.
You still did a big thing for 500, but it wasn't it Hebsy and Taddy together or something?
I couldn't. You know what? I tried. I'm going to just reveal this to you because I know before we press record, you were talking about Jim Taddy, and I was thinking I tried so hard to reunite Mark Hebsher and Jim Taddy on Toronto Mike, because Mark Hebsher has been on, I don't know, over 10 times. And for 5 years, we did Hebsy on sports. Hebsy, just a sweetheart FOTM right in there. He's game for anything. Love that guy. Jim Taddy would not do it. I had a one-on-one communication. He's basically, I got a big fat no guy.
Okay. Well, I thought
wouldn't that have been great, though?
I thought I heard, maybe it wasn't 500, but I thought I heard an episode where they were both on it.
You heard another podcast, my friend, and I'm now jealous. Whatever podcast you heard, I'm pissed off it exists because I should be the one.
Definitely one of those evenings I was on hallucinogens, I guess.
The shrooms. Oh my God, you were still here back then. Okay, because the shrooms, I hear they're better in Nova Scotia, but what do I know? I got to just say that it still irks me because what a fabulous piece of audio it would be to have Mark Hebsher and Jim Taddy together in the basement talking about Sportsline and getting that story, and I would do my thing where I walk through it and ask the questions that all the fans want asked. Wouldn't that be a wonderful present for all of us who grew up watching Sportsline? Like, I'm pissed off, Scotty Mac.
Well, that show, and again, if you're younger and you're listening, it's impossible to contextualize what the world was like back then. I mean, if the Blue Jays were out on the West Coast on a Monday night, if I was in a rush to get to school on Tuesday morning and didn't hear a sports update on the radio, chances are I didn't find out how the Blue Jays did against the Angels or A's on Monday night until I saw the box score of Monday's game in Wednesday morning's newspaper.
Right.
So Jim and Mark and the entire Sportsline team at the time would give you, as it's happening, more or less highlights of the late games, right? And so it's like, wow, I never see Tony Gwynn play. Here's a Tony Gwynn highlight. The Padres lead the Giants 5-3 in the fifth. There's a 2-run single from Tony Gwynn. Oh, I know what Tony Gwynn looks like now because I didn't have Instagram to see 1,000 photos of a current day player like
No,
we do now, right?
I just got to shout out because before you arrived, I had the live stream going at live.torontomike.com. And the song, maybe I'll play just a little bit of it to ask you. And I know I might have a decade on you. Do I have a decade on you?
I just turned 46.
I don't have a decade on you. I have 5 years on you, okay? So, but still, 5 years, who knows what that does, right? Sometimes I find 5 years is a significant, when you're talking about certain references. Do you know the reference, Wonder Twin Powers, activate? Does that mean anything to you?
Okay, so I had a reaction that suggested it might, but I can't put it anywhere.
So I just had...
Is this a cartoon from the 80s or something?
Yes. So, but early 80s, like late 70s, early 80s, Super Friends. And I just had a chat with Ed Keenan where he dropped the reference and we started talking about it. And I was thinking, okay, I don't think anyone under the age of 45 will get that reference.
But this
you might
music,
be evidence. Okay, this music. Do you know
this
music?
Week in Baseball?
Yes. Okay, so I just played this knowing you were coming over on a loop, actually. It's called Gathering Crowds. Just a little bit of it. How How about that? Mel Allen, and I used to watch this I guess it was on every Saturday, but I was a big fan of This Week in Baseball. And I just want to shout out that show, because at the same time I'm watching Sportsline, I'm watching This Week in Baseball, and that would be, they might do a segment on, Tony Gwynn flirting with 400 or something like that. And that would be how I would kind of get to know these guys.
Yeah.
So I just want to shout out This Week in Baseball, which is another way I was able to kind of see and get to know some of these stars of the early 80s.
The 80s, you know what's funny, Mike? When we're young, we always say we're not going to become those old people who reminisce about back in my day, and then you become somebody who reminisces about back in my day, because we're always chasing the nostalgia of what felt like a simpler time, right?
I do this I have 2 older kids, and I do this all the time with hip hop. All the time we talk about, my daughter will be into the latest rap song, and I'll have to go into this, tell her what it was like when It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back came out, and what Public Enemy was doing and stuff, and how
Cypress
different
Hill?
it is. I saw Cypress Hill last summer.
No shit.
Yeah, at a beer fest. I saw him last summer. It's funny because you're the Thai wrestling and Stu Stone together. So I've told the story.
We went from Cypress Hill to tying wrestling and Stu Stone together.
So I'm waiting for Cypress Hill, and it's at C&E Bandstand at the exhibition grounds, and I'm there, and I can see who is it? Ryan Wallstatt. Do you know Ryan Wallstatt? From the Toronto Sun. He covers the Raptors, the Waz. Okay, so Ryan Wallstatt from the Toronto Sun is a big 90s hip-hop head. And he just comes up to say hi, because he's been over here, and he listens to the program. Hello to Ryan.
Yeah.
And he's like, Samoa Joe is here. That's what he says to me, okay? So tell the audience, because I know you're a wrestling guy, who's Samoa Joe? Do you know Samoa Joe?
Samoa Joe is a large individual. And like he's one of... Like the Samoans generally are built like brick shithouses, right? They're defensive tackles in NFL football. They're just big humans. And
like the guy in Moana?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Is he Samoan? Do you know Moana?
Well, that's The Rock, right?
Yeah, well, it's The Rock as the actor, but that character, I feel like he might be Samoan. Please continue.
But so they're big humans, and Samoa Joe is a big human being, and he's a great pro wrestler. Did a lot of time in TNA, then WWE, and I believe he's in the other one now with the son of the quadrillionaire in Jacksonville.
I gotta catch up on all this, but so. I get told by Ryan that Samoa Joe is here, but he says it like, oh my God, like it's like he's saying Barack Obama is here or something. Samoa Joe is here. But I go, okay, cool, man. And then so I'm with my daughter and my wife, and we're at this Cypress Hill concert drinking a lot of Great Lakes beer. By the way, I'm sending you home with some fresh craft beer.
Can't wait.
Let Jamie have a can.
You bet.
I'm drinking the beer. I'm enjoying the show, but I'm like, I don't know this name, and I'm feeling like I should know the name the way that Ryan's talking about Samoa Joe. So I actually, on my phone, I Google Samoa Joe, and I start learning about Samoa Joe, like in real time. I'm like, oh, and I'm telling, Monica and Michelle, and I'm like, oh, Samoa Joe is here. Here's who Samoa Joe is. Okay, interesting. So fast forward about 15 minutes. I'm in the crowd drinking my Great Lakes. I spot the legend that is the FOTM Hall of Famer who will come up later. I have a question for you. But Stu Stone, third time I've mentioned him. He's on the show, by the way, everybody, after my camping trip later this month. I see Stu Stone. We run up. We have a big hug. I go, Stu, good to see you, buddy. I can't believe you're here. He goes, Mike, I want to introduce you to somebody. I said, oh, yeah, who?
Samoa Joe.
He goes, Toronto Mike, Samoa Joe. And I shake hands with Samoa Joe, and I'm looking Samoa Joe in the eye, and I didn't know who he was 20 minutes ago, but I'd done a little Googling, and I look him in the eyes, and I go, Samoa Joe, what an absolute pleasure it is to meet you. Like I just learned he existed 20 minutes ago, but I felt like I was meeting a king or something. I was so like, wow. That moment happened before Cypress Hill last summer.
Awesome.
That's my Samoa Joe story.
Yeah, Samoa Joe, and I think he's one of those German suplex guys. Like he'll throw you around the ring. Like he's elite that way. By the way, as you know, Stu Stone, Dark Side of the Ring, right?
Absolutely.
What do you think? And play this clip for him in a week or two when he's in studio with you. Dark Side of the Boon. Why not? Why not?
I'll
Take us. into the entire...
Yeah, you can talk about how Bob McCowan and I had a fight over episode 500, and we could do a whole thing.
Yeah, you can let all the dirty laundry out from your
the Mike Bullard
1700
the Mike
plus
Bullard
episodes.
episode will be stellar, I think. Absolutely. Okay, I'll pitch it to Stu. So then you came back. So I know we're still in the descriptions, but I liked how these threads can be pulled out and we can come back. I kind of dig this. I did it with Simmons, but although Simmons would go like a half an hour based on something in the first description, I'd be like, oh, this is going to be a 2-hour episode. Okay. June 2023. So you were gone for 4 years. Now there was a pandemic in there. I got to throw that caveat. And so you came back June 2023, but you weren't alone. But let me read the description. This was episode 1274, so 1274. Mike chats with Scott MacArthur about his departure from the Fan 590, working on The Rush on News Talk 1010, why he left, what's next for him, and how the hell he's doing. Richard Griffin co-hosted. He was here with us. We talked about the Expos, and there's some controversy with the Blue Jays. And another 2-hour episode, you, me, and Richard Griffin. That was June 2023. That was your last visit here. But I'll just roll into the final appearance before now, which is June 2025. That was a whopping 1 month ago. Okay, so we went 6 years.
You just can't live without me at this point, eh, Mike?
You know what it was? I did the Zoom with you because I'm like, okay, I got to find out how it's going for Scotty Mac in...
And you were dying inside at the quality of the audio, weren't you?
It was fine. And
was
people
fine.
liked that it was fine. And people liked that episode because it was a good catch-up with Scotty Mac. But at some point you revealed you're going to be in Toronto in June. Oh, no, you'd be in Toronto in July. Obviously, we're in July.
Yep.
And I realized, I'll just redo that episode in person. So let's lock them in for July 10. Here you are. So here you are. And this is your 4th appearance on Toronto Mike.
It's great to be on. As I know, I'm not setting you up to like be nice to me, but I say this. I'm fascinated that you still find me interesting because I'm not in media anymore.
It's just
really,
the hair,
right?
It's the hair.
Okay, but hopefully I have something to offer somebody who's listening today.
Well,
a little bit of a pearl of wisdom or something like that.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll record this, and if I don't like it, I'll just delete it. Is that cool?
Yeah, but I know you're keeping the Macho Man intro.
Oh yeah, I guess I'm gonna be using it for the rest of the
for the rest of ever.
Well, you see, it's a little time sensitive. It's got to be during Maple Leaf season at Christie Pitts, so I'm gonna run it for at least through August.
Well, I can change Christie Pitts to Scotiabank Arena, and then you can run it in the winter.
Oh my goodness, but they have to pay me some money. We'll get to that in a minute.
That's a good point.
Rogers has to cough up coin for me, but that's actually one of the things I want to dive into with you. But I just want to tell you, Scotty Mac, that you have a shitty name for SEO. Can I swear in front of Terry and Jamie?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, because I said shitty. Okay.
Do you know, it's within the last decade that the F word has started to get thrown around in the family. Like, not like
F-U-C-K?
not yelling and being rude about it, but just kind of like using it as an adjective or a verb or whatever whenever.
So, Scott, I have 4 children, and my rule with the F word has always been context, which is I don't want to hear you say that guy's a fucking asshole, okay?
That's low-hanging fruit.
Right.
Like
I don't
power
like
in baseball.
I don't like that term. I don't like that use of the F word, but what I do, I'm 100% fine with, which is like my son's into soccer, my 11-year-old, he's really, and there's going to be a sublime pass or whatever, and he'll go, if I hear, that was fucking brilliant, I'm fine with it.
So, fucking in a positive sense.
Yeah, like used to
is
like say
encouraged.
Yeah, like fucking we won, like that kind of way. I'm fine, but I don't want it used like you're a fucking piece of shit.
Right, because then that's fucking a negative sense.
Yeah. Although I will use it that way.
Yeah,
but you know,
of course,
I don't practice what I preach. But I just want to tell you, you have a shitty SEO. So what I mean by that is when people want to find out about Scott MacArthur, they're more likely to on Google and other search engines.
But can you tell me what SEO is before?
Search engine optimization.
Oh, is this the guy who was in the Mick?
Yes. Okay. Good. You know, of course, you know, you're Scott MacArthur. But he's an American actor. He's a writer, and he's best known for playing Jimmy Shepard, who's a main character on a show I didn't really know about until now, which is like a Fox comedy series called The Mick. And he is sort of according to like Google, Scott MacArthur, the actor on The Mick, is the Scott MacArthur, and you're like Kirkland brand Scott MacArthur.
So hold up. You're telling me that somebody who shares my name, who's been on a sitcom on Fox, might get better play in the Google search
SEO,
engine
right,
than me?
Correct.
I don't buy that. Not for a second. Not at all.
The Mick apparently is like Friends, Seinfeld, The Mick. Those are the big three as far as big comedy series are concerned. You ready to start?
We haven't?
Well, you know what? You know what I might do? I might let the world know that tomorrow morning I'm being visited by Nick Iones, who stepped up to help fuel the Real Talk. I'm basically like, you need benefactors. You need people that are going to support what you're doing, the Palma Pastas of the world, the Great Lakes beers of the world. And Nick Iones says, I love what you're doing. I want to be a part of this. And he's coming by tomorrow morning, not for Toronto Mic'd, but for an episode of Building Toronto Skyline and an episode of Building Success. And they'll be in those feeds tomorrow. Much love to Nick Iones from Fusion Corp. I used to be quiet on the P, and you told me, Mike, you got to nail that P, so I try to nail it, Fusion Corp Construction. Thank you, Nick. So that's tomorrow. And I just want to remind you, and I want to remind Jamie, and I want to remind Terry, if they have, or you have a drawer, a closet, a room perhaps, full of old cables, old devices. Maybe there's a BlackBerry in there that doesn't work anymore. Maybe you got an old laptop from 1998. Who knows? You go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, you put in your postal code and find out where you can drop that off to be properly recycled. Do you got it, Scotty Mac?
If it's time to 86 your Commodore 64, yeah.
No, don't do that. I would take a Commodore 64 and put it here.
You would.
I would put it here.
You got a lot of cool. I'm having nostalgia looking at this Blue Jays calendar hanging up on your wall here. I used to write the scores and the winning and losing pitchers on those calendars when I was little. Shoppers Drug Mart, Blue Jay calendar, Scotty's pointing to. And I have it fixed. My player was George Bell. So I have it fixed on May 1986. That was a rough year. That was a rough year for Dave Stieb because he'd thrown so much and so well in 85. And, of course, they went deep into the playoffs, and he started 3 games in the series with the Royals. I think in 9 days. I just don't think he could get his arm going in 86. So that was his, I would say, one down year in what was just an incredible decade. I remember he had a even number of years he would be off for a while, and before he had his second era there. This is all going to come up later in this conversation. So put a pin in the Dave Stieb thing. Let's just shout out who sent that to me. It'll come to me in a minute. I want to give credit to who sent me that calendar. I'll do that in a minute. But I want to set you up by saying this. This is going to read this news item. You ready, Scotty Mac? Yes. And then I want you to just go on this. This is unrelated to my lacking SEO. You're lacking SEO. I'm just letting you know. Okay. I'm sure you already do that. Maybe that's a good thing. Rogers, don't be triggered by that name. Rogers, tell us if you are. Rogers has become the majority owner of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. We sometimes call that place MLSE. After purchasing BCE's sometimes we call that place Bell, 37.5% stake for $4.7 billion. Rogers now owns 75% of MLSE. And as listeners know, but I won't take it for granted, MLSE owns the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Toronto Raptors, the Toronto Argonauts, Toronto FC. Rogers already owns the Toronto Blue Jays, Rogers Centre, which I like to call Skydome, if that's okay, and Sportsnet. I read a comment from you. I think it was on Facebook, but this was from Scotty Mac. And it said, I'm a number of years, this is Scotty Mac, and I'm going to pretend like he's not here. I'm a number of years into my new viewing following habits, but this cements those changes into permanency. Take it away, Scotty Mac. What do I mean by that? Yes, start with what do you mean by that? I don't think... I want to hear it all. Like, what were your new viewing following habits, and how does this cement those changes into permanency? And then we'll talk about it, because I'm in a similar boat, but I want to talk to you about it. So it's happened in increments with different sports. I've never been a huge basketball fan. My best basketball memories, and by best I mean favorite basketball memories, actually come from the early 90s. I was a Phoenix Suns fan before Barkley. Tom Chambers, Jeff Hornacek, and Hornacek was one of the ones who went to Philadelphia in the Barkley trade. Right. Dan Marley, Kevin Johnson, who later would be the mayor of Sacramento, California. So I go that far back, and I remember the 93 NBA finals, and John Paxson's shot in Game 6 in Phoenix that sunk the Suns' chances to win a title. So that's actually my basketball heyday, 13, 14 years old.
Sure.
So, look, I'm glad there's a team in Toronto. 2019, we all got caught up in it. Raptors winning the championship.
But did you get caught up in it?
Well, I was actually in the middle of a move from where I lived on Fort York to the East End on Broadview Avenue, and had the Raptors won at home in Game 5, the parade would have been the day of my move. Oh. And the way that the parade ended up unfolding, I would not have been able to move my stuff that day. So so I was glad that they won in 6. So I watched the finals. Yes, I watched the games. But I'm not as emotionally invested as I would be, say, if it was a Toronto Maple Leafs appearance in a Stanley Cup final circa 2002, in a hypothetical world where that would have happened. I fell away from hockey, and, this is kind of copping to something now, but I forced myself to be, quote, on it through the 2010s. It was easier when I was covering the Blue Jays not to have to pay attention to it, but when I did the Scott MacArthur show on TSN 1050, 17 and 18, those 2 years, I would stay on top of the Leafs. I'd watch every game. I'd talk about the Leafs, but I was forcing myself to emotionally invest. And I was actually worried that would bleed through on the air. So I would really work myself up to believe in whatever opinions it was that I was conveying, because emotionally, deep in my core, I didn't give a fuck.
Right.
And 2 things happened with hockey. One was the Maple Leafs era of the late 2000s, early 2010s. It was a complete embarrassment. On the ice, off the ice, it was fraudulent, it was ugly, it was bombastic, it was boorish, it was shitty, it was confused, it was all that. Then the 2012-2013 lockout happened. And again, the context is, didn't we just lose a season less than a decade ago to sort all these problems out? And now we're holding off into January of 2013 to get that season going. And it was around that time, I'm in my early 30s, and I'm looking around and I'm going, this is just all stupid. And so I never felt the same about hockey. And now that I'm out of the media and don't really have to pay attention, I don't. If
you don't have to.
If the but I would pay attention if I wanted to as a fan. But I don't. Like, if the Mitch Marner situation had unfolded when I was 25, and you and I were sitting here, Mike, I'd have 13 opinions and be on to my 27th opinion without having taken a breath. I would be railing. But I look at it and I go, yeah, I get it from Mitch's perspective. And quite frankly, I get it from the team's perspective. And I'm just going to go to the beach. So that happened. And then baseball, I covered it for a long time. So I have I feel a very good understanding.
Yeah, people think of you as a baseball guy.
Right. I have a very good understanding of how that sausage is made. And that's all well and good. I don't have, if I may speak diplomatically and leave the swear words out of it, I do not have, how shall I say, a strong affinity for the current front office. And I will acknowledge the team is playing very well right now, just won 10 in a row and dropped the final game in Chicago. I thought they were going to go into the All-Star break on a 14-game winning streak between the White Sox and the A's. It was not impossible to envision that, but they're playing very well right now. But I don't, unless I pirate the TV broadcasts, I don't have a way of seeing it. I don't have cable TV. I don't buy the app that shows the games. But I realized, Mike, that it isn't actually that I've fallen away from baseball. It's that I've fallen into baseball in a different way. And I know you've had Mike Wilner on this program before.
Many times.
And he's talked about this lunatic sim league that he runs. And I am one of the team owners in that league. And so the way that I stay on top of baseball is to track the performance of players from all teams, because that affects our teams this year and it affects our planning for our teams next year, because it is a player retention league and it goes year over year.
Now, this is the same league that Stu Stone is. That's
Correct.
the fourth mention. I'm going to document this when
Stu and his co-general manager Ryan Pasternak and I just made a trade a few nights ago.
So to be competitive in this, and are you allowed to speak to the controversy or no? Like, we'd had a chat before I pressed record.
Well, I'll speak to the controversy, but I won't name names.
You don't have to name names. So tell us, and then I'll come back to my point.
So it's just a really difficult thing for a listener who's like, what the hell are these two idiots talking about? But the best...
I've never worried about that in the past.
The best team in the league by record right now, we're at the trade deadline. So we play 78 games. The trade deadline is after your 51st game. So you play 26 three-game series through the year, one series per week. You have 13 opponents in a 14-team league, so you play one series at home and one series on the road against each team in the league, 26 times 3, 78 games. So we're all approaching or at the end of our 51st game, so 17 weeks into the season. So we're at the trade deadline. And the team currently with the best record in the league just traded the league's best player, Aaron Judge, to the team that has clearly had the most success through our 4+ year history, and to the owner of said team, who is easily the most adept at this game because he has the most experience with this game. And so it caused some rankled feelings and certainly made my final day's drive of the 3-day drive from Halifax to Toronto interesting, as the league was all worked up about this trade. And it was centered around the fact that how does the best team in the league trade the best player? And the reason that this player was traded, Aaron Judge was traded, is because his contract is expiring and he will be up in our off-season auction for bidding. So the theory in the mind of the seller was, I've got to get value for Aaron Judge while I can because I'm losing him anyway. Most of us look at it and say, you're the best team with the best player and you're subtracting him. What are you doing? So there was a lot of what's going on with that.
Now, I respect your decision not to name names, and even though I know these names, I will not say these names. But can you tell us, are these known people? Like, are these famous people?
Yes.
So the seller and the buyer of Aaron Judge are names the average listener of Toronto Mike will be familiar with.
Yes, they are from different walks of public life, but
so intriguing.
But they would be names that you A, would either know, or B, if you didn't, you could do a quick Google search and they would have a better SEO than me.
And it's worth noting, if you email transfer $100 to mike@torontomike.com, I will cough up both names.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to cut you in on this deal. You're going to get 10% of all money that comes in through me squealing like a pig here.
Funnel it straight to Google to improve my SEO.
Now that
Google's
I know got enough of our money.
Now that I know what one of those things are.
By the way, Ken Daniels, that's the name I want to credit for sending me this Shoppers Drug Mart Blue Jays calendar from 1986, which I love because it did hang on my wall in 1986. I did love, like you, I love these Shoppers Drug Mart Blue Jays calendars back when I cared the most about baseball.
And longtime Fan 1430 fans, early days of Fan 590 fans know Ken Daniels well, and obviously has gone on to have a great career, right? Detroit Red Wings.
Still calling games for the Detroit Red Wings. And he's a sweetheart, Ken Daniels, and he's been down here, and he's hopefully listening right now. So hello to FOTM, Ken Daniels. Okay, so we're still walking through. So one quote I had when you were talking about how you didn't care about hockey anymore. Let me get this right, Scotty Mac. You said you didn't give a fuck about hockey. I never saw someone say that before. Just a quote that jumped into my mind. Do you know what that quote is from? Do you recognize that quote? I'll say it again. Maybe we'll see it again.
Is this a movie?
No.
Oh,
You
don't
said-
hit me with the pop culture, Mike.
Well, I am hitting you, and if you don't know, that's fine. You can only be Scotty Mac, but I'm going to say it one more time. You said you didn't give a fuck about hockey. I never saw someone say that before.
I have no idea.
That means so that tells me it's revealing a lot about you to me, and no shame in this game, but that's a very famous lyric from a very famous Tragically Hip song called Fireworks. So
Okay.
you're not a Tragically Hip.
I'm
fan.
a hip. I obviously love and respect the Tragically Hip. I have sat on a dock on Pigeon Lake and listened to Bob Cajun and done the whole Canadiana thing. But I can guarantee you this, Mike, and I do like music, but you will never have me in your basement to kick out the jams.
What kind of music do you like?
Because I will sit there and nod.
But when you say I like music, so is it just that you like it when it's playing, but you don't ever seek out a specific...
Right. So,
Okay.
but I'm also one of the crazies who will play a song on loop for weeks if it hits me.
Sure.
And it can be anything. Anything. It can be Killing in the Name of by Rage Against the Machine.
Love it.
Right? It can be angry like that.
Can it be Informer by Snow?
Yes. Or everybody Wants to Be Like You.
That's a great song too.
Right? So, because I hear you talking about the Snowman all the time, so I threw Everybody Wants to Be Like You into my Spotify after I heard you talking about him, and I know he's a buddy of yours and doing some stuff.
Yeah, we were texting yesterday. I'm hanging with the Snowman, Scotty Mac.
Maple Leafs baseball and all that. So I was, and it's funny because that song takes me back to a particular time in the very same way that Killing in the Name of by Rage Against the Machine does. And I mean, I'll listen to the Beatles. I'll listen to Chicago. I will listen to REO Speedwagon. I will listen to Cypress Hill. I will, but if you say to me, like, what's your favorite type of music or what's your favorite song, I'll just sit here and drool like I'm waiting to eat a slice of pasta lasagna.
And I'm willing to bet, as a Canadian human being living in this world in the
50 Mission Cap, like, I don't want people thinking I don't know who Gord Downey is, right? Or some of the big Tragically Hip songs. By the way,
50 Mission Cap about Bill Barocco.
Right.
Quick fact dropped on the show recently, which I have to follow up with the person being mentioned, but apparently Steve Paikin is going to recreate the trip that Bill Barocco took when Bill Barocco disappeared that summer. And like, this is happening, so I just want to throw it out into the universe that apparently there's a Bill Barocco thing happening, and Steve Paikin is very involved. I just learned about this the other day.
And don't forget, from our last visit a month ago, Mike, Steve Paikin has to do a Macho Man impression next time he's in the basement with you.
I did forget, because we just did his exit interview. He left the agenda, and but he'll be back, and I'll absolutely remember to get him to do a Macho Man impression. What are the odds he does one? 0?
He looks at you and says, I don't know who this MacArthur guy is and why he's suggesting that I should, and you're going to have to explain that it's a joke from when I was on Zoom, because I think I was on the day after Steve. A month ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that would make sense, because his
came
early June was his exit interview. Yeah,
right. It came up in conversation because you said, can you do a Macho Man Randy Savage impersonation? But it was somehow, it opened the door for me to pretend I was confused and suggest that you wanted Steve Paikin to do it.
We're good together. Have you considered, forget Richard Griffin, have you considered a podcast with me? I feel like we're good. We could do it. Scotty Mac on sports. No, not sports. Scotty Mac on anything but sports.
Actually, wait until the microphones go off a little later, Mike, and then I start talking businto with you.
Okay. So I do want to walk through this sports thing with you. So you didn't get. So I understand hockey's out. You had to for work purposes. You had to follow it.
I did watch the Leafs Panthers game 7, which I mentioned to you a month ago.
So you'll be drawn into like high stakes.
I wanted to see if they were anything different than what they had been, and of course the answer was no.
No.
And
but that draws in casual fans if it's a game 7.
But Mike, I wasn't angry about it.
Right, you don't have an.
I watched with a mixture of amusement and bemusement,
right?
And I was just like, "Oh, okay, all right."
Okay, so we've covered Leafs, we've covered Raptors. I know you're a big NFL fan, but have you ever had any love in your heart for the CFL?
I mean, love in my heart, like, I I don't dislike it. This guy, Doug Flutie. I'm an Argos fan. If you are saying what would your favorite team be, I also have sort of a small part in my heart for both the Winnipeg Blue Bombers because my dad's parents grew up in Winnipeg, and the Saskatchewan Roughriders because my mom's parents were born and raised in Regina, and I know that it is a conflict of interest to hold affinity for both the Blue Bombers and the Roughriders given their rivalry.
Right.
But here we are. I am the product a generation later of Prairie grandparents, so I kind of like those teams. But I'm an Argos fan, and I enjoy when they beat the Tiger Cats.
Oh, Pakin's going to hate hearing that. Oski wee wee. Okay. What about Toronto FC, TFC? Have you ever had any interest in MLS?
Got into them. One of my brother's best friends, no longer, but they're still very good friends, but one of my brother's best friends at the time, no longer now, worked for MLSE and did a lot with the soccer team. And so in the exciting run of late 2017 and then the subsequent, and here I'm going to sound like a complete moron, but was it CONCACAF Champions League, or it was whatever it was that followed in the spring of 2018 or winter and spring of 2018 off the MLS Cup in 2017. I played a lot of big games and was quite into it there. Really enjoyed the experience at BMO Field, but no, I would be offending diehard Toronto FC fans if I appropriated their team and suggested that I was a huge fan.
So that brings us, and again, I'm just really naming the big league teams that Rogers now controls with their 75% stake in MLSE. Prior to that, again, prior to buying out Bell, they already own this team. But I want to focus a little bit on this team. Tell me what happened to you and the Toronto Blue Jays. Like, just in great detail, because I know that was the one Toronto team that you seem to truly care about and have some investment in. So
the Blue Jays, the Blue Jays have a hugely important history personally for me. I come from a baseball-loving family. My grandparents loved baseball. My dad's parents lived north of Oakville when I was growing up, and they would go to Dominion to get their groceries, and they would buy the $2 bleacher tickets for $1, and they would take us little ones in on the GO train to the exhibition stop, and we'd wander over to Exhibition Stadium and sit in the bleachers under the overhang of the grandstand and watch games. I have great memories of that. I went to Exhibition Stadium with my parents. Friends came along at times. And my dad, Jamie, in 1987, so about 2 years before the opening of Skydome, was hired as Skydome's, or the Stadium Corporation of Ontario's, CFO. And so I remember the first two Christmas parties for employees and their families in 1987 and 1988 being all bundled up on the floor, or the playing surface now, of Skydome. And we were, of course, there was no roof yet. Everything was under construction. So I have very early memories of that. And I was in the building for both World Series championships, watching on the big screen in 92, and then at the Carter home run game in 93. So when I grew up and ended up covering the Blue Jays, my grandparents on my dad's side were gone by that point. My mom's mom had passed away by then too, and sadly my mom's father, with whom I was very close as well, was alive at the time, but deeply into dementia, so couldn't extract the joy out of watching his grandson cover the Blue Jays that he otherwise would have. And he's now since passed. But when I would walk into Skydome or Rogers Center every single day to cover the Blue Jays, I would always have a moment where I would be on the field, probably be batting practice somewhere around the Blue Jays dugout, and I would just take a quick look around the stadium, and I could feel the ghosts of family come and gone, and remember the memories of the early 90s and the heyday of the Blue Jays and the two World Series championships and just all the fun that we had celebrating those. And days up at my dad's parents' my grandparents' cottage on Georgian Bay, up Bayfield Inlet, Point of Barrel, and my Aunt Heather with her Sony, that TV, the Sony, was it the Walkman? Was it the Sony?
The Watchman?
Not the Watchman. Yeah, the Walkman, of course, was. Was
the Watchman had the little TV.
Yeah, so you'd pull the antenna up, and if the game wasn't on cable, if it was not on
CFTO,
if it was on CTV,
right,
we'd watch it, and it'd be the squiggly lines, and we'd be hearing.
My God, I'm getting such a pangs of nostalgia.
Yeah, like
you describe this.
Don
I've been there,
Chevrier, and so we'd and the Blue Jays, and we're up at the cottage, and you had to take a small little fishing boat to get from the dock where you parked your car to my grandparents' cottage. Like, it wasn't on land; it was on a couple of rocks in Bayfield Inlet. Like, we had no access to newspapers or anything else while we were there, so that was our way of keeping up with the Blue Jays in summer. And they're a game up on whoever, they're a game back of first place. And of course, you had to win your division back then to make the playoffs.
Right, you were watching that magic number.
We were all into it, and so I have a ton of great memories. What has happened, and I think I explained earlier, not really realizing it until recently, is that this sim league that I'm in, that Mike Wilner runs, has taken up a lot of my energy when it comes to baseball, because I'm like everybody else, Mike. I remember I'd play RBI baseball, and then I ended up with a Sega Genesis, and I played a couple of the Sega baseball games, and you get good enough at them that pretty quickly you're winning the games 30-1. And I actually wanted to stop playing and build the team, and then let the computer simulate the game as I managed it. And so now, as an adult with 13 other people as crazy as me, we are effectively the general's manager, or the general managers of our teams. And so I think that fills up a lot of my baseball bandwidth, where I've sort of pulled away from watching games. And the other thing too is I can just pull up Instagram and get a sense of how the game went in 2 minutes. Oh, Bo Bichette hit a game-winning walk-off home run. I just watched the highlight. So I still know what's going on, and maybe in some ways I have a better breadth of knowledge of what's going on, because I stay on top of the players league-wide as I try to build my nerdy sim league team for the future. But I am less invested in the Blue Jays, and less invested in spending 2.5 hours every evening sitting on my couch when I live in Nova Scotia with a bunch of other things to do, watching a game.
But you still care. Like, you still root for the Blue Jays?
I want them to do well, because it matters to a lot of people I love, and I'm from here, and I think it's so much fun when that stadium is full, and it's a destination point to start your Friday night before you stumble on out to King Street West to continue on your evening in the middle of summer. I think that's what it became in 2015 and 2016. It'd be great to go back to that. So I wish them well, but I don't anticipate spending a cent of my own money in that stadium or on them now or into the future.
But Scotty Mac, the Blue Jays, as we speak, you mentioned it earlier, but they did lose they lost yesterday, but they were on a 10-game winning streak before that. They're in first place. They're surprising a lot of people. A lot of people are very excited about the current Blue Jay team, liking them again. All the praise is going to go to Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins. Like they're going to get praised for this team that people are enjoying, and I don't know what will happen in the playoffs, obviously. I don't have a crystal ball. But is there no part of you that roots against this team because you don't want that administration to have to be like lauded and praised?
I don't have enough energy in my life to wish ill on people I don't like.
Well, you're not wishing them to be hurt. So, like you don't want them to break an ankle or anything. But just
it's just
you're a better man than I am, Scotty.
Well,
Mac.
it's just more like, good for you, and if this gets them both brand new 5-year contracts from that extremely ambitious owner who just cut Masai Ujiri because Masai Ujiri, who is better than the owner of the team will ever be, better human, smarter human, more accomplished human, wasn't born standing on home plate thinking that he himself was responsible for rounding the bases after he hit a 400-foot home run to right field. Masai Ujiri, who does a lot of things for the community, who does a lot of things for the global community, who's brought the only professional sports championship outside of the CFL. I don't want to piss Mike Hogan
and outside
off.
of TFC.
TFC 27. Okay, so now I should probably shut up on that. But of the so-called big three,
yeah,
and
since 93.
We can't say big four because there's no NFL team in Toronto.
We have a big three in Toronto.
In big three, the only big three championship. But we can't keep them around because why would we do that when we don't want to pay for excellence, when we can strip things down to bare bones and cut costs here, and put the company into massive debt to buy out Bell shares or controlling interest in MLC and do all that. Great, good stuff. Like whatever. I just, I'm a Chicago Cubs fan and have been since 1986 when I was 7 years old. But I find Tom Ricketts, the owner of the Cubs, and in the Ricketts family as a whole, and they're very heavily involved in Republican politics in the United States. I believe Tom Ricketts, the Cubs controlling owner, has a brother who was a governor of, I want to say it was Indiana. It was one of those red states. I find him and his family to be odious, and so I'm thrilled that Kyle Tucker is a Cub, and I'm thrilled that they're having a pretty good season, and I will be interested down the stretch drive to at least follow them, but I just will not because I'm put off by these people, but because where I'm at in my life, Mike, I'm interested in different things now. I'm just not going to spend 2.5, 3 hours every night sitting on the couch watching a baseball game when I could be doing other stuff.
I agree with you. I'm curious, when it's playoff time and there's a Blue Jays playoff game, will you be at a sports bar or somewhere where you can watch that game?
Well, I'm guessing, because if they make the playoffs, cue the cranky, why are we playing at noon? Why are we playing at noon? As if it's never happened before. And as if it
doesn't make sense when you think about who decides the schedule and
as
why.
If the reason has never been explained a billion times. It doesn't mean you have to like the reason, but that is the reason, and it's not going to change. So my answer is unlikely, because the first semester of second year, or the third semester of my college program, the final 3 or 4 weeks, so mid-November to the Christmas break, is spent on practicum in a work environment. And so they jam 4 months of educational content into 2.5 months from the day after Labor Day to mid-November. So I'm thinking classes and school days will be long and drawn out through the week, and I will be otherwise occupied.
Okay, but if you didn't have school in the way...
Oh, hypotheticals. Okay, so if I was just Al Bundy with my hand slipped halfway down into my... Yeah,
Peg.
Oh, Peg.
Whenever I want to do a parody of that show, which I watched a lot of, Married with Children, I can't stop thinking about the Simpsons parody of Married with Children with, Peg, like whatever, and he flushed the toilet beside the couch. Do you remember this? He goes, and Peg saying, "Let's have sex, Al." Oh, Peg. I Married with Children would not be on TV today, right? I don't know. I think it would exist as a streaming show on.
I hope it would, because
why not?
It is. I follow an Instagram. I think it's Al Bundy Clips or something, and so it'll pop up on my feed, and I'll watch it, and it's like I'm 11 years old and seeing it all over again for the first time.
There is a crossover with your WWF, and I remember
King Kong Bundy,
on the show,
and he was like a cousin, right?
Yeah.
Because his last name was Bundy or something, right?
So there you go, Married with Children, and I know that's one of those shows where when it was released on DVD, they didn't want to pay to license Frank Sinatra's Love and Marriage.
Right, okay.
So they had a sound-alike copy. So imagine you're sitting down with your DVDs. We have to go back in time to like when DVDs mattered. But imagine you're sitting down to watch Married with Children, and you hear a different theme song when that fountain goes up, right? The first scene, I guess, is the fountain going up, and then you hear Love and Marriage, and you're hearing some bullshit sound-alike clone, which is not even the song Love and Marriage. Anyway, I digress.
But it actually adds to because the Bundys were just so pathetic, right? So it actually, I think it adds to the personality of the show that it's not
so
the chairman of the board, right?
Right. Okay. The fifth and final mention.
But I want to answer the question you asked, which was if I, in a hypothetical scenario where I didn't have class.
I just want to know, is there any emotion? Do you have any emotion for this Blue Jays team?
I would probably watch a playoff game. Yeah. If
the stakes are high enough to draw you in.
Sure. But I would not be yelling and screaming at the TV and dying with every pitch. I would simply, similar to the Leafs Panthers game 7, I would be watching with interest to see how it played out, but I would not be.
Fair enough. Like
I reserve my energy for the San Francisco 49ers, Mike, and my good friend Uncle Sean Levine, my former producer who lives in Nova Scotia now, has actually suggested to me, and I think he means it, that we should put a camera in my living room.
Oh, train.
And
like a live stream.
And live stream me like almost like I don't even know that the camera's on.
That's funny.
But because I pace, I scream, I yell, I still have that, but I
for the 49ers.
I just find the NFL is an easy investment. If you have a favorite team, it's 3 hours a week. If you have a fantasy team and that's your thing, you can track players throughout a Sunday, and then it's sort of incremental Thursdays, Monday nights, the whole deal. I just find the NFL schedule is very manageable, very digestible, and it doesn't require you to give up your life to stay locked in with and on your team.
From 83 to 93, that's a solid decade. I think it was important to me that I wanted to tune in to like all 160, be it Tom Cheek and Jerry Howarth, or if I was lucky enough, it was on TV. But it was important for me to follow my Blue Jays, who I loved, like for 162 regular season games. Yeah. But now, as I'm 51 now, this season's way too long. It's way too insignificant. Like even before this 2025 season, which I haven't peeked at any Blue Jay action at all in 2025, and I don't even feel like I miss it. I can't believe how many hours people pour in during summer hours too. Like to me, it's different. Like I'm going to watch my Raptors or my Leafs particularly, because it's like a cold Tuesday. It's a cold winter night. Like it's freezing outside. It's snowy, whatever. But these Jays games are playing in the summer. Who wants to sit in front of a TV for 2.5, 3 hours?
Well, but that's it. So, and I think I told you when I was with you over Zoom a month ago, like I love doing the Exit Philosophy podcast with Griff. I love the doing of the podcast. Griff is amazing, like just a wonderful guy. But I knew that as I really resented sitting down on like a Saturday, late Saturday afternoon, everything's an hour later out there, right? So your 3:07 Saturday starts 4:07. And I'm not going to lie to people and say that I watched 9 innings or more, depending on how it went, but 9 innings of every game.
Right.
You don't have to do that to stay plugged in, but you do need to have a sense of what's happened in games.
Right.
And as I would sort of feel a resentment, I wanted to be doing other things. And so I think that that's pretty telling. And I'm at a point in my life, Mike, and it's not just with sports. It really can be with anything, where it's like, do I enjoy this? You know, I
does this spark joy? Like the condo, what was her name? Everybody was talking about. Does this spark joy? If it doesn't spark, this is where I'm at. So I think I'll be back for the playoffs. I can't even commit to that right now. I just feel like I probably would watch a high stakes game and featuring the Toronto Blue Jays.
I at the start of June, I moved into a retrofitted former shipping crate. So okay,
like season 2 of The Wire, I can see it.
Okay. So they turn former shipping crates into small apartments.
Wow. Okay.
And I have a view of the water, so I have perpendicular sliding glass doors. So I slide both of them open, get the cross breeze, And from my couch, I can sit with a coffee and stare out at the water, and that's the way that I start my mornings. That, and somebody may listen to this and go, Jesus, you're boring as shit. Nothing can bother me in that moment. And those are the sorts of things that I take very simple pleasures in now, Mike. And, when I look back, I remember somebody asked me, it was probably a couple of years after I did the whole coming out thing publicly. They said, man, you must feel like 1,000 pounds was lifted off your back. And I said that's, and this person was not the only person to ask a question sort of around wow, did it just feel better right away? You must just feel so much lighter and happier. And my response to him and my response to others was that actually that's when the real work began. Because when you spend your entire batch of formative years creating a persona and creating a character that you think you need to be in order to survive or thrive, when you suddenly are authentic and you have no secret to keep, which means all the time frees up suddenly, because all the time you spent keeping the secret and managing your world such that the secret would be protected, what do I do with all that time? And so it can be very humbling. It was more difficult, not sort of coming to peace with my sexuality, but coming to peace with the fact that I'm a deeply, deeply introverted person. Like I test off the charts for introversion, like wild. I'm a deeply sentimental and emotional person. And so you have to accept all. It's like, you have to accept yourself for being gay. Like it's okay. No. I've done that. It's true for any individual about any part of yourself. Accepting it. So if you're somebody who feels pressure to go out a lot because your partner's extroverted or your friends keep complaining that they don't see you enough, but you're this deeply introverted person, you need to reconcile and find the correct balance. You need to reconcile with yourself. Hey, like I am going to drown out here pretty quickly if I don't take the time for me that I need. I can't people please constantly. I can maybe set aside an evening or set aside a day and go do things with people. And, if my partner is more extroverted, hey, you go out, I'll be here waiting at home. Like the only agreement we have is you come home to me, right? Like, but you go and have your fun and whatever you need to do socially and all that stuff. Like it's being at peace with all parts of me. So if you had asked me a decade ago, Scott, would you be living in the Halifax area in a retrofitted shipping crate, drinking a cup of coffee every morning and staring out at the waters of the Bedford Basin and feeling completely and totally at ease in that environment, I would have said, what? But I live in Toronto. But I'm flying from one city to the next every third day covering the Blue Jays. But I have a radio hit at 11:45 in Vancouver, and then a radio hit in Toronto at 1:15, and a radio hit in Montreal at 2:20. And then I have to get to the stadium, and then I have to interview this player for that story. And I should get a comment from this coach who works with the infielders because my subject today is this particular infielder. Then I've got to go upstairs and write that story, fit some time in to get a media meal. The game's then going to start. I got to keep writing my story while watching the game. Oops, I just got a message from the TV people. I'm going on TV, Sports Center after the game. And I just got a message from the Toronto radio station. I have a 7:45 in the morning hit tomorrow, even though I'm up for 17 hours right now because I flew from Tampa Bay to Minnesota. I gained an hour in the process, but my brain's still on Eastern time, so I'm going to have to get up early tomorrow. I'm going to be exhausted. Now, when I get up, should I have breakfast and then try to go to the gym because I do need to somehow stay in shape with with this lifestyle because I don't want to completely and totally fall apart. Oh, geez, I just got a text from the people in Winnipeg. They need me at 10 o'clock Eastern tomorrow morning on their radio station. Like, that was my life.
Yeah.
So it is just so different now, and I am so much more at ease, so much more at peace, so much happier, and I'm like challenging myself in different ways with school and different things that I'm doing now. It's just like none of this shit matters to me anymore. It's part of my life. I'm glad I did it. I learned a lot, but it's over.
Well, to quote you, about an hour ago, you wrote, "This is all just," you said, "This is all just stupid." Like, I took down a note, like sports, but that's essentially sports. It's all just stupid. It's all just meant to be entertainment to, keep you from thinking about all the crap going on in the real world.
But when you think, yes, okay, that's true, right? It's the toy department.
It's the toy department. It doesn't matter.
Right.
None of it matters. It's
Right.
just fun.
But when I look,
for some people,
when I look back at, and I was far from perfect, so I'm not sitting here saying that I didn't have a hand in it. But when I look back at some of the interactions I was involved with, the sheer panic, the threats or the veiled threats, the seriousness with which it's all taken. Now, I'm not saying putting together a television show is easy and that everybody doesn't have to play their part. That's not what I'm saying. But when I look back at it, the fretting, the misery, and part of this is the fact that these goddamned corporations fire everybody, and the people they keep end up with 3 responsibilities rather than the 2 they had, and they previously had 1. And then they end up with more dumped in their lap, and they didn't get a raise. And so now they've got 4 responsibilities, 5 responsibilities. They're essentially doing this, that, and the other thing. So they're all stressed out. And then they come at you probably a little more aggressively than a personality like mine can handle, because I've already got 16 other things that I feel I'm responsible for, and I'm a people pleaser at the time, so I don't know who I should be responding to first, because everybody who sends you something thinks their thing is the most important, and they're not thinking about the fact that you might have 15 other things that you have to do. And it's just like, I'm getting myself worked up thinking about it. It's almost like a PTSD trip that I'm on right now. But I look back on it, and I learned so much about who I am, what I want in this life, what I accept and tolerate in this life. And I walked away from all the parts that I do not accept and will not tolerate.
Well, I don't want to trigger you in that PTSD, but I'm going to just ask you specifically about the R word, okay? The R word in this context is Rogers, because you worked the last 2 radio stations you worked at. One was owned by Rogers, that was 590, and you were let go from that job, and then you got a job at 1010, co-hosting of The Rush, and that's a Bell-owned station, and you quit that job. And then you guys go back to the archive. Everybody,
I did that essentially to save my life.
To save your life, and then
and again, that's more about me than them. I want to be clear
you've
about that.
always been very kind to Bell, but you've been less kind to Rogers. And I'm wondering, because now this is where I was going with the whole. Again, I'm quoting you. I'm a number of years into my new viewing following habits, but this cements those changes into permanency. So I wanted to kind of establish like what were the new habits, and we walked through all the teams, and it was very interesting to hear your thoughts on it all and where you're at with the Toronto Blue Jays, for example. But the fact that Rogers and Edward Rogers Junior, what do we call him? The third? What? I don't even know what the term is for the current Rogers guy. I know Ted Rogers is the guy with the statue. He's dead.
Yeah,
the son of Ted Rogers.
The son
Edward
of the
Rogers.
entrepreneur.
Okay,
yeah.
so Edward Rogers. So what factor does Rogers owning all these Toronto teams play in your emotional investment in these teams, considering your personal experience with the big red machine, Rogers?
Well, there's a broader societal issue. I mean, again, we refer to sports as the toy department. But there's a broader societal issue, and it's not limited to Canada, that I believe we're living in an era of corporate totalitarianism. Maybe we have been for far longer than I've recognized, but I don't believe it's healthy for big, massive corporations to own so much of what feels like everything. So that is not specific to your question, but it is an overarching issue that I have with our existence. Keep you and me yelling about whatever social issue, Mike, the big matters of the day, right? Rhonda, who was born Brett, wants to run a 100-meter race in high school track and field 3 states over in a town you've never heard of and will never visit. And that's what matters here, right? Not the fact that a company has its name on every stadium and what seemingly is every other street in this country, right? Or in that country, United States. So keep the proletariat fighting so that the wealthy can accrue and further accrue. So that's the general overarching issue I have with corporate totalitarianism. Some people would call it fascism. Specific to this, I was a very unhappy person for those 3 years. I blame myself for it because I had heads up in advance and still chose to make the move. So that is my responsibility. That is 100% my responsibility. I had heard rumors and
you're wrong though. It's not your responsibility. Like if somebody says, "Oh, working for that company, they're going to treat you like shit. That's a bad culture, a bad environment." And you go there and they do so, you're absolving them of the responsibility. It's not on you.
I wouldn't say that I was treated like, I wasn't treated like shit. I just got absorbed into what it is. And I'm a truth teller. That doesn't mean that I'm always right. But if you ask me my opinion, I will give you my opinion. If you ask me my opinion and I give you my opinion and then you hold my opinion against me, I will consider you a liar because I thought that you wanted my opinion. And now you're throwing it back in my face. And then I will tell you what I think of you, and it probably won't go well for me. But at that point, I'm looking to get out. And I did. So they
fired you.
Right.
Okay,
right. So, and I can't get into the minutia of that, but all I'll say is that I don't have warm feelings. And it gets back to what I said earlier, which is as we get older, and I hope it's true for all of us, but as we get older and we start to understand ourselves individually better, mm-hmm. If we are, and I understand that there is some good fortune that goes with this, it is not the case for everybody. Certain stressors, financial pressures, responsibilities to others, particularly dependents, all of that can come into play. But as we get older, what I hope for each of us is that we are able to take the time to better understand ourselves so that we can become more authentic versions of ourselves, which means that even if it leads to a disagreement or disagreements that may cost us a toxic relationship, that may cost us a job, you're being you. And that ultimately, whatever comes next will suit you better and you will land on your feet. I think a good chunk of misery in this life, Mike, is that a lot, and it is not a fault thing. So I don't want people to say, it's not blame. I'm just talking about sort of my general perspective on this existence, which, and let's be honest, I mean, there are a lot of wonderful things about this existence. There are a lot of very trying things about this existence. And as far as we know, we only have one shot at this thing. If we are reincarnated, I don't remember my previous life. So I can't sit here.
Let's not bank on that. Okay?
Right. So be yourself, pursue the things that you care about, and cut out the types of people and the types of things that rob you of your joy. We don't, it's the old thing. The 87-year-old is lying in their hospital bed and somebody goes up to them with a recorder and says, "Can I ask you a few questions toward the end of your life? I wish I wouldn't have worked as much. I wish I would have spent more time with my loved ones." Like blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
Right? Okay. So I'm 46 and I'm doing that. Thanks. Like, I'm not crazy, even if I sound it. I'm just not caught up in the goddamn grind culture that this city lives off of. And I hear the panic in people's voices. A lot of people who think they're going broke tomorrow if they walked away from that job that's keeping them up at night and making them cry and breaking them down. And you ask them, like, so do you own this home? Well, I carry a mortgage, but I own more than half of it or 3/4 of it. Okay, what's your salary? How much do you have in the bank? Oh, you're not going broke tomorrow. The misery ain't worth it.
And that's why you quit your co-hosting gig at News Talk 1010.
I did that. I had a breakdown.
Yeah. And again, we're not obviously.
I have no problem talking about that. I had my experiences at Bell generally were positive. TSN is very much sort of a family-oriented place. I think the one thing I never go back, Mike, and say to myself, what could have been? Because I'm in the right place for me right now, doing the right things for me, et cetera, et cetera. But I've sat with myself and asked, if I had not left TSN at the end of 2018, would I still be in broadcasting? It's possible. Now, but I am somebody who believes, not that there's necessarily a spirit guiding us or whatever, but I'm meant to be where I am now. And so the path that I took to get here was the path I was supposed to take.
Right.
And so the decisions that I made with the best intention and with the best information I could at the time. But would I still be doing this if I had stayed at TSN? Because I have generally very good memories of my time there. I just, the 1010 thing, like I think I told you on the Zoom chat a month ago, when I got shit canned by Rogers, I totally pulled away from the industry and actually started applying to Ontario community colleges for social services work. And I'm now studying that in Nova Scotia back at school. But so the opportunity at 1010 comes up and I'm conflicted inside when those conversations are happening, because I know that my head and my heart are saying move on, but I also know that I have a mortgage, that I live in an expensive city, and that the bills need to be paid. And also I was still in the mentality that I think a lot of us are in, which is, well, this is just what I do. And I'm being offered to come back and do it, albeit in a different genre, but I read newscasts on a Bell-owned radio station in Ottawa for 10 years in the 2000s.
And it's a good gig in Toronto radio because it's a big AM station and it's the afternoon drive.
Yeah, it's all of that is all positive. What I should have been is more honest with myself at the time and taken the chances that I ended up taking. Because when the mind and the body start breaking down and saying, we're not even giving you a choice now, pal. You keep doing this. This anxiety that's oncoming, that started with me trying to catch my breath as I would walk to work for 40 minutes because I lived in the East End and worked at Richmond and John. I would walk to work and walk home every day, and I would practice my breathing, for God's sake. And I initially thought, well, this will just get better as you get in tune. And it was hard because, I'm entering a new genre in a city where I have plenty of sports contacts, but not necessarily a lot of political contacts or what have you. And it's still kind of COVID, so it's not like there are these soirees or these opportunities to go have a drink with somebody. Things were still pretty controlled. Right. At that time, or at least I was making the decisions to play it on the safe side at that point. And so everything just started to break down. First it was the breathing and then it was the agitation and, being almost being needy. I remember talking to a couple of people in the industry, not around our show, but in the industry, people who are close friends of mine. And I would just say to them, I'm like, I think I'm dumb. No, I don't think I'm smart. I'm not a fit. But What I was identifying, Mike, isn't that I'm stupid. It's that I didn't feel like a fit. And I didn't feel like a fit because I wasn't a fit. It didn't mean I was incapable of doing the job, although, the way that it played out, I became mentally and physically incapable of doing anything for a while. It was that I wasn't a fit and that I had stopped pursuing where I am a fit or felt in my heart and mind I would be a fit when I foregoed the college admissions I was receiving to my applications to go back into radio. And so,
right.
So when I get back to accepting the parts of yourself that push you toward authenticity. I was the radio guy. But you know who the radio guy was, Mike? The radio guy was the character. Now, I won't argue the skill set. I'm thankful. You and I can have a conversation and sound like we're professionals here.
Well, you can
pull up my end of the bargain, right? But so I emerged with a wonderful skill set over 2 decades. I emerged with wonderful friends that I made through my travels, both in Ottawa and Toronto. I can lay claim to knowing some pretty accomplished people. I still see some clips of certain people on YouTube and stuff, and I'm like, it's so fucking cool how great this guy or gal has become, because we could all see it in the early days, and now it's there. Like Brian Hayes, for example, right? I remember driving in first day of the radio station, April the 13th, 2011, and I heard all the shows, and I remember I didn't know Brian. I'd worked in Ottawa. I didn't really know much about his work. I think he did a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff at 640. He did some on-air stuff in the later days of his 640 time, but I remember hearing him the first time, and I'm like, that's the future of the station, right? And here we are, 12, 13 years later.
His dad's a sweetheart, too, as he's been over here.
Yeah, and so I can celebrate those things, but I do it from afar now because I don't belong there anymore. And it's got nothing to do with whether I want to or don't want to, or feel I should or feel I shouldn't. I just know at the core of my soul, I don't belong there anymore. And people will say to me, Mike, but you were so good at it. And I'm like, thank you for your kind words. There's a difference between being good at something, and that is not my assessment. Somebody's telling me that.
Sure.
The difference between being good at something and belonging in that space. And I don't belong in that space anymore, and I'm totally cool with it.
I totally get all of that. And you're so easy to talk to. Keeping these to 2 hours is a great challenge. But when you started that conversation, you talked about how people will think you're boring because you have your coffee and you're looking at the waterfront there. And I'm just here to tell you doesn't sound boring to me at all. Like, that sounds amazing. And it sounds like you found happiness. Like, you had the courage to kind of blow up your current life and identity. Like, I'm radio guy in the biggest city in Canada, and here I am on afternoon. You blew that up,
but Mike,
and you found happiness.
Radio guy was the character that kept the secret and protected the secret. You know why? Because my job, especially when I was covering the Jays, but in general, my job was something that all my friends, whenever I got to see them, wanted to talk about. Tell me what Jose Bautista's like.
Right.
Tell me what Mike Wilner's like. Is he like the guy on Jays Talk?
Right.
I tease Wilner about that too. And he's like, well, what did you say to them? I said, I disappointed them and told them you're a good guy, and they were, and he's like, well, thank you. But what's Jose Bautista? What's Mike Wilner like? So I would end up reconnecting with friends when we both had free time. They were busy with their lives too, getting married, starting families, busy at work. So we wouldn't see each other much, but when we would, they would ask me all about my job, and that would cover the me end of the conversation. So if we're talking about my job, what are we not talking about?
Right. We're not talking about Scott MacArthur.
Right. And so when there was no more secret to protect,
right,
I'm looking around and I'm going, I don't think this is me.
You don't need to wear that mask anymore.
Well, yeah, but it's also, when I talk about learning about yourself and accepting things about yourself, I just assumed, okay, I'm going to be big gay broadcaster dude now. Like, just add gay in there and I'll just work for 25 more years and retire like everybody else does. But I realized, oh my God, because my entire young adulthood, my adolescence and young adulthood was built, I built this like guy that I felt I needed to be. And then when I didn't need to be that guy anymore, it stunned me, worried me, and surprised me for a while that the career was part of what needed to go. And I didn't realize it until I had the breakdown.
Fascinating, Scott MacArthur. I'm going to put a bow on this segment because, again, we'll probably revisit this in a future visit because I find it all very interesting, the whole psychology of it all, and you explain it so well. But just a question I'm asking now, which is, would you have the same feelings about the 2025 Blue Jays?
Let's go back to the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I have to put a bow on this. If the Blue Jays were owned by Bell, if 75% of 100%, I forgot, we're talking about Blue Jays. If 100% of the Blue Jays were owned by Bell, would you have the exact same feelings today about the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays?
Can't say that my viewing habits would be much different. Can say because I haven't thought about this, can say that I would be less hawkish about my feelings. Yeah. But I can't say that I would be sitting there watching a lot of baseball. But yeah, I would. I think I can't say to what extent, but I would feel more positively.
What if I told you there was a compelling, entertaining baseball team in this city that's not owned by Rogers? Would you believe me? Absolutely,
I would. And whether it was you or Larry Milson telling me about it.
Milson, yeah.
Larry! So I still, Larry and I, every now and then, will DM on Messenger. So Gibby, so the writers would always go into Gibby's office every day pregame, right? 3.5 hours, 3 hours before the game, and just shoot the breeze with the manager, sort of get the injury updates and the whatever else is going on with the team, get some storylines and blah, blah, blah. Ask their questions. And I would always tease Gibby about this whenever, because Gibby is a little right of center and Larry's a little left of center, right? So I could always tell when Gibby was getting tired of the baseball banter because he'd turn around and make a statement that he knew would get Larry going. But he called Larry, Larry! So whenever I see Larry, or even when I DM him in Messenger, it's Larry, all caps. Larry! Yeah, so if I came to Christie Pitts and saw a Maple Leafs game, I'd sit with you and Larry.
Lair, who lives right nearby, loves coming out. He takes some great photos, too, of these Toronto Maple Leafs baseball games at Christie Pitts. It's just fantastic. I mean, it's great baseball. You don't have to buy a ticket. Nobody's gouging you to be there. You can just go there for free, sit on the hill at Christie Pitts, grab a hot dog, grab a Leafs lager. You mentioned in the, well, it wasn't you, it was the Macho Man from Beyond the Grave. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. But you don't have to worry about breaking the law. You can drink that beer at Christie Pitts. It's completely legal. Don't take in a Blue Jays game there. Taking a Leafs game. I do have a book for you, Scotty Mac, on the history of Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. Rob Butler, Rich Butler, all the histories in there. Fascinating.
Well, and I randomly opened to a page and I see Rob Butler's and Paul Spoljaric's names.
Still buddies.
Which is
still
fantastic.
Buddies. Yeah.
Couple old Blue Jays.
Well,
this will be great. I'm going to look through it, and I know my folks will be interested in this too.
Oh, amazing! And heck, I could give them their own copy. I have a.
What is this? A tape measure?
That's a tape measure. That is courtesy of Ridley Funeral Home.
Does this measure my casket, or
you can measure your casket? You can measure the length of your hair. Like, is it growing today? You've got great hair, you know.
Yeah.
Love the hair. I wonder if you got a haircut, would you still have this power? I can feel the presence. I can feel the power in this basement here. Would you be as strong if you cut that hair?
How about this, Mike? I would bet reasonably good money that the next time I'm in your basement, you and I will be able to answer that question.
Wow, Buddhist. That's not a Buddhist the Barber beefcake.
We're getting near. I think. I'm not committing to anything, but I think. Been thinking about it a while. Started to talk about it with people. I think we're getting nearer to the shearing. The great shearing.
Let me know. My Phantom Lung. You might see it over there. That's Andy the Barber's band, and I've given exclusive haircutting responsibility to Andy the Barber on Lakeshore. Let me know if you want me to hook you up with him.
Okay.
He's not a sponsor, but I do want to welcome the Waterfront BIA and we're talking on July 10th. July 12, 13, that is Saturday and Sunday this coming weekend. Celebrate the Festival of India, Chariot Fest at Center Island. So there's a big parade on Yonge Street. The Chariot Fest celebrations then move to Center Island on Toronto Island there for the rest of this weekend coming up. It's open and free for all, and it's something for everyone to do. There's a diverse mix of celebrations and fun. So check out the Festival of India Chariot Fest at Center Island this weekend. Got it, Scotty Mac?
Love it.
Quick hits, because I'm trying to keep this at 2 hours because I have a bunch of stuff going on here. But
What, do you have like a life or something?
I do have a life.
What, are you crazy?
Do love talking to you, though. By the way, we talked music earlier, and I took a note to ask you if you ever bump into Ashley McIsaac when you're hanging around Nova Scotia there. But he's probably on Cape Breton.
I haven't yet.
Well,
but I will take a selfie.
Home,
I will take a selfie with him if I ever...
Take a selfie with him. I think you guys would hit it off. But I also, next time you have a long road trip, I want you to listen to Ashley McIsaac's Toronto Mike debut, which recorded in, I think it was in May. Ashley McIsaac on Toronto Mike was bananas. You got to hear it. So just tell me next time you have a road trip, you're going to listen.
Well,
to
I'm
Ashley
driving
McIsaac.
back in early August, so I'll do it.
Ashley
and I got to
McIsaac.
listen to the Brunt and others Dave Steeb episode.
Well, let me ask you about that real quickly here, since you brought it up here. We're doing some mop-up here. But yes, I just recorded with the two gentlemen behind the social media account Today in Blue Jays History. Have you ever seen this account on... well, it was on Twitter. It's still on X, but I don't go there anymore. But it's on Blue Sky. Do you know what I'm talking about? Today in Blue Jays History.
I remember it before I shut down my
X.
My account with the Cybertruck owners company. But but I haven't followed them on Blue Sky. Maybe I will. I should
check them out on Blue Sky.
Yeah.
They were in the basement, and we had Stephen Brunt joining us from Newfoundland. And we were talking about Dave Steeb and making the case for Dave Steeb to be in baseball's Hall of Fame. Do you, Scotty Mac, think Dave Steeb belongs in Cooperstown?
I'm the wrong guy to ask because I'm hugely biased. Dave Steeb was my mom's favorite pitcher. Dave Steeb is the answer to a question I've posed to others before. He's my answer to the question, if you could teleport back in time to one day or one night and watch an athlete in their prime, who would you pick? And I would pick Dave Steeb. I would ask and hope to be able to watch Dave Steeb pitch a baseball game one more time in his prime.
Wow.
I adore Dave Steeb. I adore everything about Dave Steeb. I love the fact, probably wasn't best that he rolled his eyes at some teammates and would get frustrated, but I always felt that he cared. Right? And maybe
he wanted to be perfect.
It wasn't the best way to express it, always, showing up your teammates. But if it's coming from a good place, wanting to be the best, wanting to win today, we've all got to pull our weight. And Dave Steeb did almost every time he was out there. The back-to-back one-hitters in September of '88, where he took the no-hitters into the ninth, the perfect game for 26 outs on August the 4th, 1989, against the New York Yankees. Damn you, Roberto Kelly. So, I remember all this. And driving back from a baseball tournament I was in Sarnia, and listening to Tom and Jerry on September the 2nd, 1990, as Dave Steeb got his no-hitter in that 80,000-seat Cleveland Stadium that had about 8,000 people in the seats that day. But he got it. He got it done. Special pitcher. I love watching highlights of him. That slider and just watching hitters flail. I'd put him in, but I'm the wrong guy to ask because I am beyond biased in my love for Dave Steeb.
You're checking your bias at the gates here, and I have the same bias, but if you ask people with less bias, at the time they valued wins and hardware, like how many Cy Young Awards, how many wins, and Dave Steeb never won 20 games in a season.
No, he didn't.
And he never came close, really, to winning a Cy Young.
You know what I forgot, Mike, and I know it was a different era of baseball, so a little different. We always have to put that in context. I was surprised when I went to his baseball reference page recently and realized how few strikeouts he had per 9 innings. He wasn't a strikeout pitcher.
No, it was
but
soft.
he had that wipeout slider, but he didn't strike. You think with a pitch like that,
right,
he'd be a K per inning guy, but he wasn't.
Hey, I'm going to take you back. Let's close your eyes, maybe. Scotty Mac, close your eyes and listen to this.
1 ball, 1 strike to Brown. The pitch, a swing, and a fly ball right field. Junior Felix is there. He's done it. He's done it. Dave Stieb has his no-hitter. Dave Stieb has his no-hitter, finally. He has done it here in Cleveland. He is being mobbed by his teammates. Dave Stieb has pitched the first no-hitter in Blue Jays history.
So you'll hear that, and you'll hear the Don Chevrier call, which I missed because I was working at the CNE. I missed that call too.
I actually got chills listening to that. It was special times. Great pitcher. And I remember the fly out to Junior Felix. I have no idea who Brown's first name is. The Cleveland, the pitch to Brown.
Yeah, he was a bench guy, yeah.
It must have been a bench guy, but I do remember it was Junior Felix who caught the 27th out.
I know Candy Maldonado was the second out in that inning and was struck out as a second out.
Future world champion with the Blue Jays in 92, right?
Absolutely, 100%. Candy Maldonado. And I believe Dave Stieb walked 4 batters in that game, so I don't even think he considered it one of his better games. But,
Murray Eldon. Candy Maldonado.
So Murray Eldon, who I've never met, but is still with us. Okay, Murray Eldon is still alive.
You got to get him down.
But I've wanted to have, since I recorded episode 1, I've wanted Murray Eldon on the phone. The names I remember the best. Okay, so I remember how he did Tony Fernandez. Tony Fernandez is like tattooed in my brain as one of the
Jesse Barfield.
That one as well,
yeah.
Jesse Barfield. But these, I always talk about the drive of 85 and how much I love that 85 Blue Jay team. But Murray Eldon, saying these names, I just recently got, I had off the top of this episode, I had Macho Man cut a ID for me. Well, just last month, I found myself at the Joe Carter Classic and got this.
Hi, this is Ernie Witt. You're listening to Toronto Mike.
So Ernie Witt cut a promo for me, and that was a pretty exciting moment for this fan right here.
I remember the old Ernie chants at Exhibition Stadium. He'd come up in a big moment, and the crowd would chant, Ernie, Ernie.
Absolutely. Oh, my goodness. Buck Martinez was another good Murray Eldon, the way he would do.
The platoon, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, the best platoon was Rance Molinix and Garth Orge.
Orge.
We grew up with this platoon. I got to say, it kind of warped my thoughts on platoon because they seemed more normal to me growing up with Orge and Molinix. And then you realize that it's not actually like super common to have like a complete sharing, whether it's a righty or a lefty pitch in that day or whatever. Like you don't get platooning the way we had it with Garth and Rance.
So much has changed, right? Because I just remember A-Rod. Now there was Cal Ripken before him, but Ripken wasn't like a 40 home run guy. But how A-Rod really changed the shortstop position, because it used to be you
didn't expect power from the shortstop.
The elite athletes who could make all the plays in the field, the Ozzie Smith types, and they'd be slap hitters or they'd take their walks or whatever. But if they had like 2 home runs when the season ended, it was like a banner year.
Right. I think Cal ruined that. I know A-Rod took it next level, but I feel like Cal Ripken kind of blew that up. But just last thought here before we move on here to wrap up is that we talked about these heartbreaking moments with Dave Stieb, and you said you remember almost said Roberto Clemente, shout out to Ridley Funeral Home, but Roberto Kelly and the Yankees won and all these things. But the one that, if you watch it, your heart breaks all over again was that bad hop on Manny Lee.
So 87.
The ball, it's a routine grounder.
Yep.
Right? That's the no-no for Dave Stieb. And there's that lip on the field between, I guess, where the dirt on the infield and then there's a lip. Like literally it hits that lip and it just takes off like 20 feet in the air. Manny Lee doesn't have a chance to bring that down. Like think of the luck required to lose a no-hitter that way.
Well, yeah, and just the final week there in 87, right? Where they lost 7 in a row and that chopper certainly contributed to it, but it kind of had an otherworldly feel, like, okay, everything's out to get them now. But you're telling me, because Ernie Witt had gotten hurt and Bill Madlock had hard slid into Tony Fernandez at second base at Exhibition Stadium. Now think about this. There was like Tony comes down on his elbow after the hard slide on this, like there was like a little bit of wood or something underneath the turf. Like he came down hard on his elbow.
Yeah, there was something there. Yeah.
Like
shattered it.
Like think about the fact that those players used to play on cement covered by green carpet and that was acceptable. Like the thing I always remember is that Jesse Barfield, Lloyd Mosby, and George Bell each were out of the game by age 33 or 34. Like how, because they played the entire 80s on that turf at Exhibition Stadium. But that was heartbreaking. 87 is a killer, and I think it took until 92 when they won the World Series to truly feel like that had been exorcised.
100%. By the way, to this day, Scott MacArthur, whenever I have a blister, like, my whatever from a long walk or something, whatever.
It's like, hey, look, Al Leiter.
Yeah. Oh. And to this day, I have an Al Leiter. Like a blister to me is an Al Leiter. You said Jesse Barfield, and I realized how much I hated that trade at the time. And because of the blisters, I hated that trade for years. And then all of a sudden, all Blue Jays fans have this moment of like, what a great trade that was.
Well, yeah, I mean, because Leiter went on. My understanding, and it would probably take a Steve Simmons or somebody else who was around and who would have been talking to people at the time, but my understanding is that when Al Leiter left for Florida in free agency after the 95 season, Devon White had left, Roberto Alomar went to Baltimore, like it was kind of the dismantling of the heyday team.
Right.
But that there was some resentment held for Al Leiter because they had stuck with him through all of the blister issues and all of that stuff, and he had a good year in 95 on a really bad team. That team had cratered. But he had a really good year, and he parlayed that into good money with Florida. Obviously ended up being traded to the Mets because he won the World Series with the Marlins, and then Wayne Huizenga was like, trade everybody. And Leiter went to the Mets and was in the Subway Series in 2000 and ended up having a very nice career. But I think it was a bother to some in the Blue Jays higher-ups that Al Leiter chose not to stay in Toronto.
Without a doubt. Last question, Scotty Mac, and this won't be the last time we talk because I just love talking to Scott MacArthur. I don't care who knows it. I'm putting that on the public record, okay? You're a sweetheart. Jill Deacon was my guest yesterday. Jill got a great story, by the way, because Jill Deacon had 2 bouts with breast cancer, had to take a medical leave of absence from her hosting job. She was doing afternoon drive. When you were doing afternoon drive, she was on Here and Now on CBC Radio 1. And then she suffered from long COVID. So for 2 years, it was the worst. She talks about it. But she made a decision, kind of like you, a lot like you now. You need to listen to Jill Deacon. There's a lot of parallels, actually. Hopefully you never have to, battle cancer or long COVID. But she talks about a decision she made to walk away from hosting afternoon drives in Toronto and finding happiness. And she gave, it was a great conversation. But Reshmi Nair used to fill in for her on Here and Now when Reshmi was with CBC. Reshmi Nair, who is a great FOTM, who was wonderful on this program. I don't know what you can say, and I asked Jill this, and she wasn't saying anything, and she's a friend of Reshmi's, but Reshmi Nair was let go from 1010, where you were working. You were co-hosting The Rush with her, The Rush with Reshmi, and honestly, this is somebody I like as a person, Reshmi Nair. I think she's a fantastic broadcaster, but she has seemingly disappeared from the public realm when she left the 1010 airwaves, in that I text her to see how she's doing. She doesn't reply. That doesn't mean much. A lot of people don't reply to my texts. Ha ha ha. But is Reshmi Nair okay? What happened there? It's been years now. What a strange Toronto mystery that she seemingly disappeared and she was in the public eye for so long.
Yeah, I mean, all I can offer is the truth, which is that I don't know. I would also say that if I did know, which I don't, but if I did, whatever's going on is for her to share if and when she wants to do that. So it wouldn't be my place to share even if I did know. But the truth of the matter is I don't. And a lot of that, Mike, is to do with the fact that when I left. I pulled away from the industry. So I remember when you reached out to me, and you said, hey, you want to come on? I said, well, just so you know, like I'm not able to help you with any of the goings on or the scuttlebutt because I've pulled away. I maintain some close friendships with people who are still in the industry, but we are friends, and we talk about life and our interests, and we share memes and articles and gripe about the state of the world and the country to our south, and all of that. So. I really have no handle on it. I hope that she is well. I hope that she is enjoying whatever it is she is doing and wherever it is she is at. And it is true. She's cool and a very good broadcaster.
And I echo those sentiments. Rush me if you're out there. We just hope you're happy. That's all. We hope you're happy. Well, couple of quick hits. One is that if you are chatting with Stu Stone in your baseball league, you cannot have a reasonable discussion with Stu Stone about the baseball decisions made by Atkins. Stu Stone and Atkins are very close, and I can tell you this, and I say this again with the Jays actually playing interesting, entertaining baseball, doing very well right now, but Atkins can do no wrong in the eyes of Stu Stone. Are you aware of this?
I'm aware, and what's funny is that in our nerdy league group chat, Jay's stuff comes up because there's a healthy Toronto or Canadian contingent in the league, lots of Americans too, but so baseball stuff comes up, and we'll say, especially last year when things weren't going well, we'd say, oh, this or oh, that, and he would always, before I knew about the friendship, I was always like, I remember a couple times I'm like, is Stu being serious? Because Stu's a comedian. He's a funny guy, right?
Sure.
So I'm like, is he being serious or is he being funny? And if he's being serious, like, is he friends? Is he friends with Ross?
Right. He's definitely
and I
friends
find
with
out,
Ross.
of course, that he is.
Very good friends. Do you own a copy of Blowing Up, Jamie Kennedy and Stu Stone's album? Do you own a copy of this?
No.
Okay, you got to check it out. The big song is Circle, Circle, Dot, Dot, and then there's another banger called Rollin' with Saget.
Would Stu
Bob Saget.
Would Stu crush me if I pointed out that the photo of him on the front of the CD here, this wasn't made yesterday, was it? I'm not saying you've aged, Stu. I'm not saying you've aged. I'm just saying it wasn't yesterday, was it?
It was not yesterday.
Stu's fantastic. Stu, I hope the trade we made the other night makes your team in our nerdy league that suddenly Toronto Mike is involved in, even though he doesn't have a team. He seems to hear about it from everybody. I hope it makes your team better. $100,
Mike at torontomike.com, and I'll tell you the two people in that big trade with Aaron Judge there. That's all it takes. Scotty Mac, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Always great to see you, and maybe we'll do it again very, very soon.
And does that mean I'm going to visit you in Nova Scotia?
Dude, the invite's open. Always. It's just, you got to get yourself out there.
Yeah, can I bike there? No, I guess that would take a couple of weeks. Maybe.
You would be insane, but you could.
If I had that kind of time, okay, these are all things I need to consider.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,728th show. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. Delicious fresh craft beer. FOTM's only drink Great Lakes. Brewed right here in southern Etobicoke. Palma Pasta. Jamie and Terry, they're going to get that Palma Pasta lasagna. I've got one in the freezer for you.
Unless I eat it on the drive home.
You're going to break your teeth.
Yep.
Toronto's Waterfront BIA. Toronto Maple Leafs Baseball. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Building Toronto's Skyline. And Ridley Funeral Home. See you all tomorrow night, which is Friday night. It's Toast with Bob Willett. And the guy who co-wrote this song we're hearing right now, Romantic Traffic, Stu Stone? Did I say that? I can't fix that in post. Rob Bruce. I have Stu in the brain this episode. Rob Bruce co-wrote this song. Okay, this is Don Pyle and Shadowy Men on a Shadowy Planet. I love Kids in the Hall. See you all tomorrow night for Toast. Be there.